Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's HDI webinar, Keeping Remote Support Simple, the Key to Productivity and Engagement. Today's webinar is brought to you by LogMeIn Rescue, and there's a link to the website right in the attachments on your BrightTalk window along with other materials. HDI, smarter service, better business, and you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, on our open membership site, connect.thinkhdi.com. Just sign up for community membership and you'll have full access. And we now have a podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud called Spockcast. I'm Roy Atkinson, HDI Senior Writer Analyst, and we have just a few housekeeping announcements before we begin. If you are experiencing any technical problems, please refresh your browser. It's the best thing you can do. You can participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during the webcast. They'll be answered during the Q&A session toward the end of the webcast as time permits. You can download the slides from today's presentation by opening the Attachments tab on your BrightTalk screen, and be sure to check out the links as well. There will be an audience poll, and you can respond in the Vote tab by the presentation window. Today's webinar will be available on demand shortly after the completion of this live webcast, and you'll get an email reminder that it's available to you. The slides will automatically advance throughout the event. With us today is Kyle Turner, a Senior Solutions Consultant at LogMeIn. Kyle has been with LogMeIn from Citrix for over 7 years, supporting customers in sales, sales engineering, product specialists, and now solutions consulting. He's passionate about working with help desks to find solutions that get the job done and provide actionable data for top-level support stakeholders. Thanks for being with us today, Kyle.
My pleasure, Roy.
And before we start our discussion, we'll have a one-question poll here. So let's go ahead and launch the vote. So go to the Vote tab. I'm going to start the voting. And the question is, on average, how many different tools or screens does a level 1 support analyst in your organization have open when working to resolve a case remotely? So you might have your incident management tool, you might have 1 or 2 or 3 different remote support tools, and some other screens open, maybe your internal knowledge base is open. So how many tools or screens does the level 1 analyst on average have open while they're working remote support? That's really kind of one of the central points we're going to talk about today. So it'll let you continue voting. So do you have 1 or 2 screens, 2 or 3, 3 to 5, or more than 5? And if you're not sure, maybe just think about it. If you're not sure, take a guess, an educated guess. And we'll give you a few more seconds to complete the voting, and then I'll stop the voting and we'll display the results to you. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to stop the vote, and we'll take a look at the results. So about a quarter of you said 1 or 2 screens. A little short of half, 44% said 3 to 5 screens or tools, and about a third of you said more than 5. So let's think about that. That means that somebody has to be bouncing back and forth throughout those 5 screens while they're working a case, and that really is one of the things we're going to lean on pretty heavily today when we talk about productivity and engagement and remote control. Thank you for your votes on that. So let's look at some stats about remote control. This is from HDI Research. We ask, what are the technologies that you use every day to provide support in general? And the number 1 used technology in support centers across the industry is remote control. It's become extraordinarily valuable over the years, and that percentage has grown and grown and grown and grown. And so you can see that a huge number of support centers are using remote control as their number one go-to every day. And that's really an amazing stat. And I happen to be working in desktop support at around the time that remote control tools were really starting to proliferate, and I can tell you that my team has greatly benefited from the fact that many times they did not have to go and make the trip out to the desk side to resolve an issue. Sometimes you have to do it if it's a hardware issue or something like that, but remote control made a huge amount of difference in our productivity. And we also ask in our annual survey, what are the real important, what are the must-have technologies for providing successful report? What do you absolutely need in order to get your work done? And as you can see, incident management, of course, something to record the case and make the comments and how document the resolutions and all that. Knowledge management's right up there now, which is great. Remote control is number 3. So not too far behind incident management. So remote control is a must-have technology and is the most broadly used technology in the industry. So that's extremely important. So who's doing this remote support? The answer is that not only the desktop or desk side support folks are doing it, the entire support center, including the desk and everyone else, is using remote control. And that's an important change. Support center, in terms of the desk itself, is actually the number 1 user of remote control now, and that has, to a great degree, as I mentioned, diminished the necessity for desktop support staff to have to go out and about, and they're not even up to the same level of using remote control anymore. So the desk, this is shift left, right? The level 2 or desktop or desk side support has offloaded a fair portion of that type of support into the service desk. Why? Because the technology is very effective and increasingly important in resolving a great number of the cases that you get. So this is all really good information about how remote control is being used in the industry. But as our poll indicated, you're using a lot of screens, and we're going to talk about that. So this tells you, this is again from our annual research, how many organizations are able to resolve tickets remotely. So the column on the left is the percentage of organizations, and the column on the right is the percentage of cases. And as you can see, about 1/3 of organizations are able to resolve between half and 75% of their cases remotely, and a small percentage, 13%, right up to 99%. So this is an extremely effective tool, and it is widely used for this reason, because it can really be very, very effective. But on the other hand, 25% of organizations measure the percentage of tickets resolved using remote support. That would be an important stat from my perspective. I would want to know that as a manager. How many of these cases are being resolved using the tool that we have that provides remote support? And why isn't that percentage a lot higher? I mean, given the fact that this is a hugely widely used tool throughout the industry and is used in resolving a large number of cases, one would think that this would be a widely reported metric, and it's not. Only 25% of organizations measure it. And one of the big reasons for that is that there's not enough tool integration. There's not enough usage reporting, because the tools don't work together, and there's tool scatter. If you have a multi-platform environment, like the one that I formerly administered in my old job, we had several different types of remote control that were used per platform. So we would be using one type of remote control tool for Windows machines. We'd be using a different one for Macs, which were about 40% of our environment. We had a huge Mac population. We would have a different one for Linux. and sometimes people just had a personal preference as to which one they like to use to connect. And so this created a tool sprawl. Well, how do you get the metrics from all of those different tools? And when you start to think about that, that's one of the reasons that these metrics are not being gathered and reported. So tool sprawl is a major reason. Everybody, or certainly most organizations, a great majority of organizations, report on the metrics that are simple to gather. And those generally are the ones that come out of their automatic call distribution system, their ACDs, or their IVRs. Again, some of the metrics come out directly from their incident management tools, but if there are tools around the periphery that still might be very important, that still might be resolving a large number of cases, then they don't report on that because it's not particularly easy to gather that information. Well, the easy metrics are not generally the ones that give us the information we really want. So it's important to gather the metric on how much you're using remote control so that you can see its importance to your organization, and think about it not only for the time savings for your staff in the support center, but also for the people who are in the organization working, whose productivity you want to protect. That's your job. Get them back to work as rapidly as possible. They don't have to wait for somebody to show up. They don't have to try to make an appointment. Generally speaking, they can say, yes, please connect to my machine, and get the issue addressed and resolved as rapidly as possible. So it's exceedingly important to know some numbers around this. So tool sprawl also happens because you might have multiple tools to accomplish similar jobs. You might have to have one tool that connects to desktop computers, one that connects to certain, operating systems, one that connects to this kind of mobile device, one that connects to that type of mobile device. Well, once you start getting that, you're increasing the number of screens that your people have to worry about, and increasing the complexity of the environment that they work in. So that tends to not contribute to productivity. And there's some evidence here, which we'll talk about in a second. If users have to choose among multiple technologies, it actually lowers their use of technology. Isn't that a fascinating thing? The more choices you have, the less likely you are to use it. So I don't know about your tool area, but this is not too different from mine. I've got a little bit of tool sprawl going on in my garage. That is not mine, by the way, but I wish I had that many sockets. But moving from screen to screen creates an opportunity for human error. And I worked a very large project where I used to work, where we tried to reduce human error as much as possible. And one of the main areas that we attacked was having people not move off their screens while they were performing this particular task. They would stay right in one screen. They didn't physically move away from what they were working on. They were performing a physical task and recording the results of that task. It was a research facility. And we tried to reduce the human error by keeping them right on that one screen. Having too many tools reduces effectiveness and satisfaction. Why? Because you're constantly trying to figure out which tool is the right one for the job. And then having to choose among multiple tools reduces the adoption of technology. That's what I was just talking about, and you can read about that in the book called Dynamic Collaboration. And it explains the research behind that and why a number of choices. I mean, we're all overwhelmed with technology anyway. Look at social media, right? All the different social media platforms that are out there. How do you pick which one's the right one to use? And so we're going to talk, I'm sure, about some of the reasons for that as we get into Kyle's part of the presentation, which is coming right up. So pay attention to your folks. Ask them. I always say ask the people who do the work. Ask them how effective it is for them to have to choose among multiple tools. It's important for them to have a seamless work environment, and we'll talk more about that. So having a simpler tool set increases effectiveness and efficiency. I just invented a new word, effectiveness, which is efficiency and effectiveness. It reduces human error. It increases satisfaction because you don't have that confusion. You don't have to constantly be jumping back and forth between them. and it simplifies reporting. If you only have one remote tool, then what you're going to have is a way to get numbers out of that tool that's much easier than trying to figure out which tools got used this month and which ones are the most important and how to get the different metrics out of each tool, right? So now Kyle is going to talk to us about simplification for your business. Take it away, Kyle.
Great, thanks, Roy, and a wonderful job and wonderful points you've made there. You'll hear some of those same points made during my conversation because it's really the same across all groups that we work with. Here at LogMeIn, we believe that the simplification of the support environment leads to greater productivity, just like everywhere. And in the world of remote support, the productivity is really providing faster and more complete resolutions to customers the first time they call, if at all possible. You know, when you're thinking about, you know, how could this impact me and why would I want to spend time doing this, I was kind of asked the rhetorical questions of what could your team accomplish if there was more time freed in their day? And then what would the impact of reduced user downtime be in that user's department that they work? So, you know, if there's something that would drive you to the conclusion that maybe we could be doing this better, start thinking about the answers to those two questions because that'll give you some driving force. So what we do here is really around efficiency, and we'll talk more about this in my presentation. We also believe that that great experiences lead to happier and more productive employees. It's why so many business leaders are prioritizing the end user experience. We hear it time and time again, especially if you sit on a external customer-facing desk, but probably even from your help desk manager or your VP of internal support or ops, probably driving that same message home if you're like most of the companies I talk to. Whether your customers are internal or external, the ultimate challenge is to improve the experience while cutting costs. If you've never heard that one before, right? So I wanted to take some time to discuss ways that you can improve the experience by using the types of tools that you may already have and making sure that you're using the most effective solutions to get the job done. Many companies out there leverage capabilities from our tool Rescue to make it possible, but you can still apply some of these ideas and best practices regardless of the tools that you use. Closing the loop. This is popular terminology in the help desk world, and the context that I want to use it in today has to do with closing the loop through integrations between your tools. A tool at the end of the day is a means to an end and not the end itself, so integrations between these things actually help drive that efficiency. And integrating integrating these support tools will ensure that you have a number of different advantages, like having data consistency, making sure your help desk agents have a single location for information, and the overall reduction of tool sprawl as we've been talking about. In the world that we live in, that I work in every day, connecting the ticketing and the remote control systems really help amplify teams' productivity. In speaking with our customers, we find that there are tons of benefits in integrating these systems. I'm going to list a couple of them here, but I'm sure you could probably come up with some of your own. Most of these are going to have increases in productivity and efficiency, right? So help desks with integrated systems usually see things like lower handle times, seamless data synchronization between the tools, or even to a platform aggregation tool for the reporting or dashboarding, improved end user experiences, and better team optimization. When we were thinking and we were talking to our customers and prospective customers, we came up with a couple of others, like the ability to save time and reduce cumbersome tasks like copy and paste to close out your sessions. That way you can stick and move as a support professional and move on to that next thing. If you bill against time or have other metrics that are bill back based, reducing leakage of time is hugely important, and being able to track how much time was spent in the remote support session becomes a key business driver for your group proving its worth, right, and being able to bill out that time to subsequent departments or any external support that you might be doing. And then, of course, the synchronization of data really, at the end of the day, has to do with the reduction of human error. You don't have that wild card of somebody typing in something wrong. Maybe they grabbed the notes from the wrong session, pasted it into the wrong ticket, right? These are things that can't happen if you have an integration set up. Automate what's possible. Automation is a controversial subject, but can really unlock some possibilities around efficiency and, also kind of consolidating the tools that are in use in your environment. Obviously, identifying routine tasks that can be automated is really step one with setting up automation. We see in our line of work tons of different things that could potentially be automated through a scripting tool. Our tool offers a built-in scripting engine, so people ask us all the time, what can I do with this? Well, it can be used to do things as simple as bringing back telemetry information, so find me the version of this software and bring it back to me script. Or it could be as robust as go get the software package and download it and then run this antivirus thing and then bring me back a report about all of those things. These are things that I see in the deployments of our products at places like Best Buy Geek Squad is probably the one that does the most with scripting that I've ever seen. But, businesses of all sizes and shapes. System diagnostics and telemetry information in a report is another way to reduce the amount of time it takes to gather critical information that will help with the handling aspect of the incident. Using a tool that will aggregate those reports all into one place so that you have easy reference keeps the support professional from having to go out and through a remote control session launch a bunch of commands or launch a bunch of windows where they would have to go search for this information. Having a diagnostic tool that aggregates that information really cuts down on that type of behavior and ultimately reduces the total handle time of the session. And probably the risk of your customer watching you or your colleague watching you and learning, okay, this is how I get to this cool place in my computer. Okay, let's break that next time I'm in there. That sounds like a good idea. Predefined responses, or canned answers as a lot of people call these, is a great way to keep consistency amidst varying degrees of acumen on your desk. It also can give you a link into some of those other commonly used tools, thinking back to Roy's slide around knowledge management being 58% in the responses of the tools that people are using to provide successful report. Well, imagine if you could take those knowledge articles and easily link them in your remote support technology. So that way, when a web chat comes in, or even you're in the middle of a remote control session, you want to send somebody to a page on their device that has a knowledge article or something along those lines, you easily, find that article in your canned answers, you push the link, it pops up in their chat window, and they've got it right there in front of them. Basically doing that and stopping people from going down the road of, oh, let me pull up the KB and let me do 10 search terms to find that article. Having that article at an arm's length in that dire time crunch of this remote support session is really a tool that provides a lot of value for the people who have set that up. And making sure, too, that they're segmented, right? So not everybody in every desk or even in every support group within an organization has the same need for those knowledge articles, or maybe they use completely different knowledge articles. So having the ability to categorize or hard segment the availability of those responses, one from another, is really important to making sure that there's a degree of Zen amidst the different departments that use your remote control tool. So I definitely recommend that if you can do it within the tools that you leverage. I love this picture. In preparation for this webinar, when we were thinking about the tools in the context of superpowers, it became abundantly clear that the primary thing that people are using tools like what we do for is centralizing and creating kind of a hub for an array of devices that can be supported by a single software. As Roy said in his introduction, the world that we live in when it comes to devices that are coming into our purview, the number of operating systems is growing. And it grows slowly, thank goodness, but it does grow. So we're seeing new things come into the marketplace, right, like Chrome OS and different flavors of Mac OS and Windows. And we have to be prepared to support these different operating systems as they come in. So we really need to think about the tools that we provide the teams because, number one, they're on the hook for providing this support and maintaining uptime in our organizations. So we want to make sure that they're outfitted with tools that can meet this need of these new operating systems coming in. Also, one thing we didn't talk about yet is whether the device is on or off the network. We're seeing more and more at-home employees than we've ever seen before. So how do you deliver support to somebody who's off the LAN if you only use tools that are based on RDP? The answer is not very easily. You've got guerrilla IT stepping in where people are going to grab whatever tool is out there and start using it, and then what do you have? More tool sprawl. And tool sprawl you may not even be able to report on. So giving the team the superpower of being able to support the tools from the tools that are sponsored by the management becomes really, really important. For the managers in the crowd, that kind of parlays into my next point around providing information and performance data on the desk. So how are we doing against SLA? How are we doing with handle time? How are we doing with survey responses and CSAT? All of those types of things in good remote support tools can be captured via reporting engine, via heads-up display, or like a live dashboard that's showing in-flight sessions, and then also through API calls. So think about using a dashboarding tool that you know and love for other types of reporting in the desk, and being able to populate what's going on in your remote control technology right into that tool that you're already using elsewhere. And this has a lot to do, too, with the ever-present need to train, coach, and maintain quality assurance in the desk if you're a help desk manager. If you've got new people, which we all do, right? We all have to train new people. How do you expect to do that? Do you have your technicians train one another? Do you train your technician? And if the answer is yes to either one of those, does the support tool that you use allow you to collaborate on sessions, either from a manager to a tech or from a tech to a tech? And these are very important bits when it comes to making sure that you have consistency in the desk. And we feel like what I just said is really going to give the team the superpowers it needs to be able to provide that type of training for new people. What's the customer journey look like? I feel like everybody says customer journey. It's a huge buzzword, right? Knowing what the customer journey is, number one, is super important when you're providing remote support. How are you going to empathize with the customer when you're unclear yourself about how the join flow works? Also, being able to look at reporting metrics and see textually, was somebody on hold in their customer journey? Did we have to reboot a machine? How long did that take? Did we have to transfer the call to another support professional because I didn't know the answer? Maybe we did. How long did that take? So knowing those types of metrics around the journey of the customer in the remote support session and maybe even pre-session is really important. And having a tool that can give you that type of information is very valuable. to really getting a grasp of what that is. When you look at the full journey, of course you want to take inventory and consolidate when possible. You want to ask your agents and the people who are using the tools every day, what are you seeing out there? Where do you feel like we could be seeing some efficiencies? And use that to either evaluate the tools you already use, or if you're looking at new tools, bring that to the vendor that you're going to be collaborating with and say, hey, we surveyed our team. This is what they told us. What can you do for me? I hear that all the time as a pre-sales solution engineer. And you can really tell the people who have done that type of legwork prior to making a phone call to me and really figuring out what's important to the people who will be daily users of the tool that they adopt. From the customer perspective, of course, keeping empathy for the plight of the customer when joining a tool that might be really intimidating and scary is first and foremost. Making sure that you're communicating that, this is the join flow. These are the things I'll be able to do with your computer once I'm connected to it. And then what happens when I'm done? Does something stay behind that will allow me unattended remote control later on? Or does it remove everything so they would have to go back through that join flow in the future in order for me to reconnect to their machine at a later date? Making sure that the person understands those types of things are really key to providing less anxiety about the remote support world and making it easy for them without overcomplicating it. So now's the part where I talk about LogMe and Rescue, which is a tool that I work on 8 hours a day, every day. It's a wonderful remote support tool. There are many benefits to using a tool like this, most of which we've focused my conversation around today. Roy's conversation very much complemented the way that we normally present information to our prospective and existing customers as well. Some of the tools that you can expect to see if you join us for a product demonstration or speak to us about our tool are remote control with screen sharing across multiple operating system platforms, the ability to fix some issues with one click through automation, the ability to easily configure settings by role within your organization or what we call technician groups, easily configure settings for said groups, polling diagnostic for quick troubleshooting, not to mention the out-of-the-box integration with ticketing and CRM tools, which we've really been focusing on today in the topic of tool sprawl. So think of tools like ServiceNow, like Salesforce, like Dynamics, and many other incident management and CRM type platforms. We do offer some out-of-the-box, and for those that we don't, we offer open architecture for self-made integrations. And then being able to report on that and have business intelligence around the remote support tools in our environment. What's happening? Who's providing the support? How long is that taking? What's the customer journey like? All those questions can be answered through robust administrative and management type tools that we offer here in the Rescue product. And then I would be remiss if I didn't call out the advanced mobile support. The abilities to support through both screen viewing and robust remote control, the remote control type functions here. So a little bit of everything with the LogMe and Rescue tool. Please come and see us. I'm happy to show demonstrations as I do every day with this product. It is definitely a good one. And if you do plan on joining us at the HDI Annual, we'll be at booth 518. We'll be highlighting a case study for the Thomas Jefferson University Health Center. So check that out. We'll have some collateral at the booth. We'll be showing demonstrations, and we'll be there for conversation around these topics and many others that happen to be on the top of your mind. So with that, I think that's my last slide, and I'll hand it back to Roy.
Thanks a lot, Kyle, and thanks for mentioning HDI conference coming right up. It's only a couple of weeks. Every time I think about that, I get a little nervous, but we've got a great conference coming up for you. So we do have quite a few questions here, and I'll start with, you mentioned technician groups. Are those created within the tool itself or pulled from another source like Active Directory or AD?
Great question. So we are working on AD integration. We have it in beta with release expected within the month, and that would allow for provisioning and deprovisioning of subscriptions of Rescue against an AD group. And the settings of that particular technician group is nested in our product, so you would just provision them and then you tell them what you want to do.
Awesome, thank you. Do you see tool integration as a way to improve workflow, or are there specific metrics others look to improve by doing this?
Well, definitely it can improve workflow. I mean, like you said, tool sprawl is a real thing. 3 to 5 windows open at any given time, probably more, is what we normally see when I go on site. So reducing some of that, but also making sure that, again, we're capturing the data between the two tools and populating the data into the system of record, right? The ticketing system is normally the system of record, not the remote control tool. So we want to make sure that we're feeding the system of record the best information we possibly can. And then what types of things should a remote support tool do for the customer? Oh gosh. I think maybe see the slides that we already talked about and come see me in a demo and I can show you a little bit more along that topic.
Great, thanks. You mentioned the customer journey and customer experience. What types of things should a remote support tool do for the customer, and how can it make their life easier?
Well, for customers, it's really about something's broken for me and I need it fixed so I can continue my day. So getting that done as quickly as possible through the least pain of joining a remote control session and hopefully not spending too much time, although I'm sure all of your team members are lovely people. Most people would rather not spend a ton of time with them, and it's not personal, it's just they have other work to do in many cases. So that's really the main MO of most users or customers, if you will, when they're reaching out to support is to get back up and running. And getting them in and out of support sessions to reach full resolution is really what it's all about.
And being able to give smooth feedback as the session progresses, I'm sure, too, right? To assist the technician who's working on it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great addition, Roy.
Let's see. So how do you account for and report activity against different entry points or channels, as we call them, chat, phone, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh, man.
So
that's such a good one.
The metrics question.
Yeah, that's such a good one because I feel like this is a part where a lot of people don't have visibility in the tools that they have now. Maybe they get a sense of the volume of tickets being closed over a period of time, but maybe they're not tracking the method by which the tickets were created and eventually how those tickets were resolved. So being able to report against the channel becomes important because that can give you some direction on auditing the customer journey for that particular channel if it makes up a large percentage, or potentially bringing in new channels if you feel like diversifying the channels for support are needed. So being able to report that, I think, is indicative of being able to make those kind of higher level decisions.
And I mentioned earlier that, you know, only about a quarter of organizations are reporting on their remote control stat. The primary, how many cases have you resolved using remote control? That's the big one, right? So it's amazing. But there are also, this touches on one of the areas where there's really a lot of room for improvement too, where organizations are reporting heavily on I mentioned earlier, the easy ones, like a telephone where they pull the stats from an ACD or an IVR. It's easy to get those metrics every month, but sometimes you have to go chasing metrics for other channels like email and sometimes chat, depending on what tool you're using, et cetera. So being able to get good information by channel is really important as well. And I'd love to see on our next go-round for our industry reports that the percentage of organizations that are reporting on the different channels goes up. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Here's a pretty general one. Can Rescue give metrics information to a variety of incident management software? So am I able to pull information from different brands of incident management or ITSM?
Yeah, we offer some out-of-the-box integration with some industry-leading ticketing platforms and incident management platforms, as well as offer an open architecture API for maybe homegrown incident management platforms if you wanted to create a similar type of integration that would yield the same type of results of being able to create the remote control session information like the PIN code to connect or the hyperlink to connect from within your ticket, thereby mapping the ticket with that session and then mapping back all of the data that we capture as part of our remote control sessions. All of that can be done via our API or through out-of-the-box integrations that are published in the store or like the Salesforce App Exchange, ServiceNow Store, all those types of places.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. It says, Kyle mentioned consistency of answers. Why is this important?
I probably should have spent more time on that. Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's got their own flavor and spin, right? So being able to create a consistent answer to frequently asked questions becomes really important. Not to mention, you may have some people where English is a second language on your desk. So providing grammatically sound and spelling correct answers is something that we commonly hear from our customers who use our tool. So those canned messages can really provide some value there, and I'll let Roy finish that up.
Yeah, the other side of that is, of course, it goes back to customer experience. If I get answer A from one person and answer B from another person, I've got a gap in my credibility. My trust has suffered because of that. Or on the other side of it, maybe I'm trying to find a technician that's going to give me the answer that I want. Oh, sure, I can do that for you, even though the preferred policy is not to support the particular thing that you're using or that you want to get done. So consistency is really the benchmark of good customer service. If you go, let's take it out of the tech support arena, and let's say you go to a restaurant and you have a great time. The food is really good, the service is spectacular, and you want to go back there again, and you want to take your friends, you go back and the food is so-so and the service is not so good. You feel embarrassed, you feel let down because your experience was very good one time and now it's not good. And the same thing happens when we have interplay with a technical support or customer service person, in that we want to get the same level of service every single time we go. If you, for example, an organization that's great at this is Disney, right? You go to a Disney park, after you wait in the enormous lines, you're going to get a great experience because they make it their life's work to make sure that you do have that consistent, good customer experience. And it's so important to do that. You build trust within your organization. You build very good habits with your folks, and your users will come back and trust you because you're delivering that consistency of experience. So it's wicked important. As I would say if I still lived in Maine. So what different types of devices can Rescue connect to and or control is this one? So that's for you.
Yeah, really about operating system. So Windows, Mac OS, iOS to some extent for view only, Android, and some others, but those, what I mentioned, make up the vast bulk of their respective device type of devices out in the world right now. So there are some, obviously iOS is view only, there's some caveats in there, but for the most part you're going to get a full remote control session out of most of those.
Thanks. And I think we addressed this from a couple of perspectives, but it might be worth just fleshing out since we have time today. This is great. Why is it important to get the metrics from remote support tools? And we both talked about that a little bit. Maybe you want to, fill out your answer a little bit more, and then I'll have some things to say about it as well.
Well, really any type of metric for any type of tool is about delivering business intelligence and value for decision making. So if your decisions are around headcount, maybe you want to know your technician time allotment or availability throughout the day. And being able to look at a tool like the Rescue tool can give you some idea of what that looks like if they're using this tool as their primary tool for collaborations in that time. Being able to, again, report on the customer journey, being able to report on people as they work throughout their day, who are my frequent flyers to the support desk, right? Who is coming back for more, which department is needing the most support from our groups, et cetera. I think all of this is information that can be gleaned from the metrics in a good remote support tool.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that a little bit. As you mentioned, metrics are a super important way to demonstrate value, to demonstrate things like return on investment, right? If you're not gathering metrics around the tools that your organization is purchasing, it's very hard to show what return on investment your organization is getting. So when you go back to senior management next time to say, hey, we'd really like to get this tool, they may be able to say, well, we don't know how you did with the last one we bought, so what are we supposed to say here? It's really, really good to have the stats backing you, and pay attention to what the stats tell you as well. Sometimes you have to look beyond the individual metric and look at how it fits into all the metrics that you gather every month and say, oh, look, when we added this, we were able to decrease this over here as well. So your metrics kind of are a fabric that's woven together in such a way that when you pull a thread on one side, something happens on the other side as well. And increases and decreases just don't happen in one spot, they happen in several. So pay attention to that.
Yeah, great point.
And I do have another question here that's, I'm sure that your constituent base is mixed in terms of internal and external support, which you also mentioned a little bit. As our constituents in HDI, we have a blended audience of folks who do internal support, which is our largest group, and we have folks that do external support, which is a smaller group. We also have a fairly large number of people who do both. So how easy is it to use remote control when you're talking about people who are outside your immediate organization? They're not on the same internal network and inside a firewall. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That is the primary use for a tool like what we do here at LogMeIn. Making connections securely over outbound ports over the internet is the foundational part of what we do. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of a remote support session with our tool or even used it yourself, you know that to be true. And that is part of the conversation that we've really had around the consolidation of tools. Imagine you no longer have to launch different consoles in SCCM or RDP or whatever you happen to be using for your on-LAN support. What if you could do the support for the on-LAN and the support for the devices and the off-LAN devices from the same software platform? What type of efficiencies would that create for you? And those are the things that really make Rescue special.
Great. That's a terrific answer to that question. Do we have any more questions from the audience? So last chance to get some in here. If you want to ask a question of Kyle or of me, if you have any questions about the HDI stats. And I'll just say a little bit about that, just to kind of, maybe some of you out there will be able to participate in one of our surveys. We do a quarterly survey and compile those results. We release reports throughout the year so that we have a technology and operations report each year. We have a salary, practices and salary report each year. And then we have one on metrics every year. So if you happen to see a solicitation for one of those surveys, please take it. And while we're on that topic, please do rate this webinar. It's important to us. We do pay attention, and we love to hear how we can improve. So if you have not only a star rating, but maybe some remarks, you can tell us what we did well, what we didn't do well. So please take a moment to rate us. And if we don't have any more questions, I think we're about ready to wrap up. I would like to thank Kyle for being with us today, and certainly thank Log Me In Rescue for sponsoring this webinar. Thank you, Kyle, for your great answers as well. Appreciate that.
My pleasure, Roy. Shout out to the Dallas-Fort Worth HDI group, and thanks very much for having me.
Great. And now I'll say this webcast is copyright 2019 by UBM. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by HDI, which is solely responsible for its content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of HDI, thanks very much for your time, and have a great day.